beat the heck out of us in every part of football. It's penalties, fumbles, interceptions. Without that, I think we move the ball.
We're going to play football. Yippee!
You are listening to The Review on the OSG Sports Podcasting Network.
Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of The Review. It's the Online Sports Guys College Football podcast featuring us, the Online Sports Guys. This week it's only a three-way dance. It's Brother Wilkie over here on one side, OSG Nelson here on the other side, me, OSG Phil. And we are the Online Sports Guys. We love talking college football. And guys, the season is upon us. But before we get into previews, which is something last week we said we would start doing here, got to talk about the biggest news in college football, really, as we record this late on a Sunday afternoon, the passing of Bobby Bowden. For those, well, if you're watching this podcast or listening to this podcast on your phone app, or from your favorite podcasting application, you know who Bobby Bowden is. Bobby passed away at the age of 91. He had been dealing with pancreatic cancer over the last couple of months. And I guess we really knew something might be up this week when word came out that his son Terry was coming home, taking a leave of absence from his job at Louisiana Tech to come be with his family. We all have our Bobby Bowden stories, but I guess we probably need to start here with John, who spent some time at Florida State during his tenure.
Yep. And you could not have found a more accessible, more genuine, not just coach, because, you know, in the days when television is having all the coaches shows and it's always the taped late night Saturday after the game, and then they roll it out first thing Sunday morning. You know, Bobby Bowden was one of those must-see coaches shows because it was always positivity with his student athletes. But then if there was an incident that occurred that he wasn't happy about, there was a dadgum holding call. You know, it was dadgum this, dadgum that. It was making sure that and that was the level of his displeasure. It was dadgum, gosh darn it, one of those. And so you could not have found a more genuine, wholesome individual who happened to be really the guy who resurrected, if you want to call it that, Florida State football after the Bill Peterson years, when you had Daryl Mudra come in and not do well at all as head coach. Bobby Bowden comes in. His history everybody knows from what is now Samford in Birmingham in West Virginia, and the successes he had there, and turning Florida State into a perpetual top 5 program, cranking out and a lot of athletes that made it to the pro level. I know that I noticed a lot of former players reached out on social media to express, you know, their condolences and their love for the Bowdens and the Bowden family. Deion Sanders definitely was one of them. And to see him in any situation, and I know that Wilkie can get into the ACC storylines as well, when there was an opportunity to try to get Coach Bowden away from the beaten path, away from the time when it was August to January, and when he was making the rubber chicken circuit, and you had the opportunity to get an interview. Here's mine. It was I think it was Touchdown Club of Atlanta. It was a rather large banquet that was being held downtown hotel, Peachtree Plaza kind of a thing, and the producer that I had at the time, I wanted to do something completely and totally quiet, away from all of the folks that were in the big meeting room and the big dining hall. And so I send the producer in on a bit of a Hail Mary, and I said, okay, tell Coach Bowden that an alum and a former producer for Seminole Uprising wanted to do an interview with him over in a room. I know his time's busy, and I know that, you know, all this kind of stuff. So, of course, I'm getting the gear ready, and producer walks in, and goes, John, look who I got. And it's Coach Bowden. And so literally, we get a one-on-one with Coach Bowden at this big to-do and this big soiree. And he's like, take your time. Whatever questions you want, it's all good. And so that's the kind of guy that he was, that was part and parcel to college football and really turned Florida State into a household name outside of their own household, which was a tall order at the time, but he created a legacy that will never be forgotten in Tallahassee. Wilkie, what about your ACC stories?
Well, first of all, you mentioned some of the outpouring of love for Coach Bowden. Obviously, you mentioned Deion Sanders. Prime said, "God bless the Bowden family and friends and loved ones. My prayers are with you. Lost one of the best coaches I ever had." And Warwick Dunn saying Coach Bowden made a huge impact on, and not only in my life personally, but so many others. He was blessed to have his family by his side when he passed. My condolences to his wife Ann and their family. Many of those have been trickling in. But, when I think of Coach Bowden, I think of a man of faith, a strong faith, and a guy that was authentic. One of I have several favorite stories of Coach Bowden. In my encounters with him, I could go forever, but a couple that come to mind was from the Touchdown Club of Atlanta when I was a member. It wasn't too long ago. He was a featured speaker. I was getting an interview with him as well. And me and a guy by the name of who John Lee Baker, we walk up the stairs at the restaurant there, and we see Coach Bowden's asleep, and he's got those, he had those wraparound sunglasses, and he had those on, and and his head back, and he was dozing there, and Lee was kind of like concerned that he might be not feeling well, or God forbid it passed then, but he kind of tapped him on the knee, and it kind of startled him a little bit. He goes, he took off his glasses. Yeah, wait, what you guys want? And that kind of thing. And I looked at him and said, "Coach, I'd like to do an interview with you now." And he knew about it. And he goes, "Yeah." And, he's kind of droggy. He wasn't awake yet. We're walking across the room, heading down the stairs. Midway through the stairs, he realized it was me and said, "Well, John, how are you?" It's like, "I'm good, Coach." Yeah, let's chat for a while, So it was that was typical Coach Bowden. And the other one I could think of, which is kind of poignant right now, I was with Paul Crane, and we were interviewing Coach Bowden. This was over 15 years ago when I first hooked on with the ACC, and this was a time when Florida State was kind of hitting some mediocrity at the time. And there were some questions about his passions, I guess, for coaching. I mean, you know how we are in the media. If you have a bad year, the vultures are kind of circling, right? It was one of those kind of times. And he was talking about it, and he threw some dadgums in there as well. But the best line was, I could be the head coach of the University of Heaven, and I would still have to win ball games. Mm-hmm. And he stressed that. And I thought it was just a great line. It cracked me up. But it just spoke of his authenticity and just who the guy was. He's really the last of those larger than life head coaches that we still had alive. Guys like Johnny Majors, Pat Dye, Frank Broyles, Darrell Royal. He's really the last of that era of football coaches that literally we thought could walk on water. And, it's just it's a shame that he had to go, but man, what a life. I mean, 91 years. He would say he's 91 years young because he always felt like he was 25.
He got his money's worth, that's for sure.
Yeah, he got his money's worth. And, it's a sad day, but it's also a day where you smile and just say, what a great life. And, what a great example of humanity, really.
Yeah, surprisingly, of all the years that I covered sports in the Southeast, I only really had one interaction with him. Most of my time was spent with SEC schools. I worked a Florida State North Carolina game at Doak Campbell Stadium one time when I was working in Jacksonville. And true story, I go work the game by myself, and after Florida State won, but it was a really close game, and coach looked like he was kind of wound up afterwards. And they ushered you, at the time, they didn't have a table set up for you to interview him. They ushered you into his office. And everybody kind of gathered around his big desk and kind of got down there on one knee, and he sits down, and there's probably 30, 40 cameras in the room and writers and all the like in there. And he sits there and he just looks at everybody. Mm-hmm. And he looks at them, and they all look back, and nobody says a word. So after about 30 seconds or so, I said something and asked him a question about the game. And he looked up and he smiled and he said, "Well, that's a good question," and then proceeded to start talking about it. And afterwards, I had everybody else look at me. He's like, "We don't do that when he does his thing after the games." Well, what do you mean? We just wait for him to start talking. How long do you wait for him? Whenever he starts talking is when we go.
So you broke protocol, but Bobby didn't mind that.
No. He just kind of smiled. He was ready to get it going.
Well, and John, I think you'd be a great source for this. I don't think since Bobby left that the media and the higher ups of Florida State have really been able to comprehend what today's coaches are like, because Bobby was so personable and so approachable and was open to anything. Yep. Jimbo Fisher kind of shut that down quite a bit when he was at Florida State, and it didn't bode well, and it really confused and disillusioned some of the Board of Regents and some of the muckety mucks at Florida State. And even with Willie Taggart and now Mike Norvell, there's still those pockets of people that are expecting their head coach at Florida State to be open and invite you into the office. And that isn't the way the modern college football coach is. And I think it's still hard for people in Tallahassee and Florida State fans to be able to adjust to that.
Yeah, and it is a 180-degree adjustment, because you're going from the guy that would basically sit down with you at a table and just start talking, and you're sharing stories and asking questions and doing whatever, to the corporatized, for lack of a better word, version of what you're looking at when it comes to college football. It's you're talking to CEOs, or you're talking to presidents of these corporations, or what have you, however you want to address it. But yeah, it's the version of what we're used to, and having all the access, to now having the access controlled, and the sound bites being what they are, because that's the information that these individuals who are now in charge want to give out to you, instead of being frank and accessible and just letting you. He'll still give you stories, and those coaches of that generation and that genre, they'd still give you stories, but they would still dance around the issue, but they were more storytellers in their sound bites, as opposed to the sound bites and not telling stories. And so I guess that's what you're looking at with the 180-degree difference these days.
Storyteller, cliche guy.
Storyteller, businessman. I'm not a businessman. I'm a businessman.
Indeed. Some great memories, some great stories. He'll always be remembered in college football, and he should always be remembered in college football. And I think John's kind of summed it up pretty well. He may be the last of that era, of the open, accessible, personable coach who just let you know whatever was on his mind. Mm-hmm. Guys, I guess we ought to move on here. Before I do that, the quick promotional announcement. If you're watching us at home, you have found us on YouTube. That at OSG Sports is where we are. If you're listening to the podcast, that means you found our phone app, perhaps. as John flashes it in front of the video screen or holds it up. For those of you who are just listening, he's holding up a phone. Trust me. We have a phone app. It's OSG Sports. Look us up on the Apple Store, Google Play. Look up OSG Sports. We are there. Same thing goes for Facebook and Twitter. Hit us up at OSG Sports. In both venues, we are there. We will respond. It may take us a while, but we will eventually get back to you. I'd love to hear from you. Let us know what you think. You like the podcast, some elements you want us to talk about. It's all good and it's all open. Let us know. It is free.
That's the bottom line. 'Cause Stone Cold said so.
Guys, let's move on to the second half of the first block, the second quarter, if you will. It's time to talk college football previews. And we might as well go alphabetical here. So since we were talking about Coach Bowden in Florida State, what do you say we kick it off with the ACC?
Hit me.
Sure.
And I guess any conversation with the ACC, at least over the last really, 5 or 6 years, kind of has to start with a big dog, and that's Clemson. Can Clemson keep their run? I know they're not dogs, they're tigers. The big cat, I guess, is a better way to put it. Is anybody going to top their run? Is anybody going to knock them off their perch here in the foreseeable future?
I don't think so.
No.
It's a little bit of a rebuilding year for them on offense. They've lost Trevor Lawrence, who we all know is everything quarterback for them. Travis Etienne is gone. Some of the receiver depth has gone as well. So they've got to indoctrinate some new players. But DJ Uiagalelei, he's played some. That
was a good blow by. That was DJ Uiagalelei. But yeah,
yeah.
Go with DJU.
Yeah, DJU. There you go.
Thank you for pointing that out. He got some play time last year. He got some experience against Notre Dame, which is kind of hard to. He can't beat that. And played pretty well during his stretch while Lawrence was out for a few games. Is he going to take that next step? Is he the next elite quarterback to come out of the Clemson with a Clemson uniform?
I think so. And when you're talking about Clemson, there really isn't a whole lot that you can go into a great deal of depth about, just because you anticipate that they're going to be there when it comes to storyline. The running back depth is there. Yes, you lose Travis Etienne. Justin Ross is slated to come back at receiver. DJU is supposed to, a lot of folks are saying DJU is supposed to have the breakout year. So I don't anticipate, they'll grow into the season, but I think that by the time they get through the first month, so I think they'll be fine offensively. Like I said,
they got to hit the ground running. They start with a game against Georgia on September 4th in Charlotte.
True, and keep an eye on Will Shipley, perhaps at running back, one of the true freshmen that could be making an impact. I don't anticipate that the game will be one of those that's going to be a lights out game. I would probably take the under if we're looking at juice boxes, and I don't have the number in front of me at the moment. I'm sure it exists, but it's probably somewhere in the high 30s, low 40s. I would probably go with the
plenty of time for that to change.
Yeah, and you're looking at a defensive line that's probably one of the best in college football. Skalski comes back for the linebacker unit. Trenton Simpson is around. You lose Darian Kendrick, but you're going to be tough, against the pass. So I really don't have Wilkie. I don't have a whole lot of concern where Clemson's concerned.
Oh, neither. And when you talk about DJU and his getting a chance to play last year, he played at Notre Dame, and oh, by the way, they won that. They were pretty good in that game. He had a great game at South Bend. So he knows the system. He's performed. It doesn't concern me at all. Look, Clemson is at the reloading stage. I think the Clemson Georgia game is going to be fun. Even if they lost that game, it's not that big a deal.
No.
I mean, they're going to go through the conference schedule pretty unscathed, if you ask me, because they're just that much better than everybody else in the conference. So if you're concerned about Clemson, just be concerned that everybody stays healthy and that the depth that they've built with recruits and so forth is there and it comes to fruition. It seems to always have for Clemson. So it's going to be business as usual at Death Valley.
Anybody got a thought about maybe North Carolina finally pushing through?
Well, I mean, I think that
anybody's
North
going to do it, that may be the team.
Yeah, I mean but that's I'm looking at you look at the divisions. I think that North Carolina should win the Coastal because you got Sam Howell coming back, and you'll have a freshman like Gavin Blackwell at wide receiver. Ty Chandler's coming in as a transfer. You've got Josh Downs perhaps being looked at wide out. And I think that, defensively, they've got to cut down on a lot of the chunk plays that were given up by that defense. But really, I think North Carolina wins the Coastal. But I still think that North Carolina, engaging North Carolina versus Clemson, it's still Clemson and everybody else, but that everybody else is led by North Carolina.
To me, North Carolina is the team to beat in the Coastal. That has always been the weak spot in the ACC. But North Carolina, I think, is the way Mac Brown has conducted business there, even with the transfer portal. He's got the horses to maybe start that domination that we thought North Carolina would have when Mac Brown took the job. And so, yeah, I do think that North Carolina will be the class of that part of the ACC schedule. They do go to Notre Dame this year, but fortunately for them, it's not a conference game this year. So, the only hiccup I can see on their schedule, they do open at Virginia Tech in Blacksburg. So that might be because Virginia Tech, not to go ahead here, but Virginia Tech might be the challenger in the Coastal because this is kind of a make or break year for Justin Fuente. It's, they didn't make a bowl last year for the first time in, 20 something years.
Yeah.
I used to know these things. He's kind of in a year where it's kind of put up or shut up. He hasn't really put together the winning pedigree that Frank Beamer did. And so that's going to be a big game for Virginia Tech. It's at home. But I just think Carolina has probably got the superior talent in the Coastal and should win it and should be playing Clemson and Charlotte.
Yeah, I mean, the first 2 years, Fuente was 19-8, but he's only been 19-18 in the last 3. And so I can understand why the folks in Blacksburg are, as you say, Wilkie, they're going to be lined up for a put up or shut up. I mean, I look at, yeah.
In the last 2 years, they've had injury issues. I know that. But at the same time, you should have the depth, quality of depth there to be able to withstand some of those injury issues. And then they had COVID issues last year. So I get all that, but Fuente hasn't really captured the fan base. He's entering his the 6th or 7th year at Virginia Tech. So this is kind of the year, and this is kind of the time when Frank Beamer started cranking it. Because remember, his first 6 years at Blacksburg were not really even mediocre. I mean,
they were bad.
They were really bad.
Couple of teams.
And so it was about a 6th, 7th year when he had the breakthrough, and this is really where you need to see the breakthrough with Virginia Tech.
What about another team that jumps off the page and had a great start to last season, but kind of faded a little bit down the stretch, and that's the Miami Hurricanes?
Sorry, I don't recognize those colors or that location.
I mean, they really kind of shocked a lot of people when they got off. What was it, like 5? They reeled off like 5 or 6 wins to start the season, but then they kind of went and fell off. And a lot of it was defense. They couldn't really stop a lot of people. But Derek King was fantastic for them at the beginning of the year. But he's coming back from an MCL injury. Yeah,
Derek King. Mm-hmm. Yes, he's coming back from that he suffered. Was it in the bowl game?
Yeah, it was in the bowl.
Which it looks like he's going to be able to come back. But Miami, their offensively are still loaded. The defense, they had some defections from 19, and the replacements just weren't really up to speed. But I think Miami's going to be much improved. I really think it's really between Miami, North Carolina, and Virginia Tech as to who's going to win that division. So.
Yeah, it's interesting. Manny Diaz fired the defensive coordinator after last season. He's going to take over defensive play calling duties himself, John.
Yeah. Last year, Miami gave up on average 27 points a game and just under 6 yards per play. And so you can understand why Diaz would make that decision. I know that especially in the secondary, you look at a transfer coming in, Tyreek Stevenson coming in from Georgia, that there's a lot of hope that has been put on him. Leonard Taylor, a true freshman on the defensive line to hang out with Nesta Jade Silvera. So there are some pieces there, but can Manny Diaz be both CEO and DC at Miami, with North Carolina being a part of the discussion, them being a part of the discussion, and Virginia Tech being a part of the discussion, 1, 2, and 3 in the Coastal?
I think so, because a lot of those guys that are still on that defense, he recruited. So I think it's just, it's more going to be time management and, let his OC kind of be more autonomous. He's going to have to do that. Now, Miami opens with Alabama here in our neck of the woods. So I wouldn't use that as a barometer, although it might be a good game. You never know with Miami sometimes. But you look at their schedule and, after that they host App State and Michigan State. I know Michigan State's a little down, but it's a Big Ten school. App State we all know their history.
Why, yes,
and that's kind of a tough non-con game for them. And then, they have to go to North Carolina. They have to go to Florida State. Those are going to be two roadies that, Florida State and Miami. It's going to be a nail biter, and it always is. And then going to North Carolina with that talented team, that's really probably where obviously Virginia Tech and North Carolina open, but if Carolina wins that, then that could be the telltale sign there in mid-October that Carolina is the class of the Coastal. But Miami, the defense is going to be improved. I mean, if Manny Diaz, that's where he earned his living as a defensive coordinator, and he feels comfortable doing it, he's going to do it.
And one last team I want to talk about before we wrap up here and go kick it over to halftime, and that's the program that we talked about at the beginning of the show a little bit, the Florida State Seminoles.
Why do you do this to me?
Because I bring it up for a reason. I bring it up because the likely quarterback for the Seminoles going into the 2021 season, Mackenzie Milton.
Yeah.
Are you intrigued by that as I am? When we last saw Milton, his leg was all but shattered playing for UCF 2 seasons ago.
Yeah.
When he was one of the most dynamic playmakers in college football. Is he somebody that could come in and make a quick difference for a team that desperately needs a jolt of energy?
I see Wilkie's deferring to me.
Yes,
he might be.
All I'm going to say for a team that's 21-26 over the last 4 years is this. It looks great. I hope Mackenzie Milton is healthy, 100% healthy, because we know what he can be. We know what 2018 Mackenzie Milton was at quarterback for UCF. It's going to take a while for him to get game sharp and game fit. How much patience is there going to be with him? But the bigger concern for me is keeping him upright. The offensive line the last handful of years has been porous, and that's being kind. So I legitimately think that you need to fix an offense. You need to fix the offensive line to make sure that Mackenzie Milton and we're all hoping that it is the McKenzie Milton that we've all seen, can show you the tools that he has and that he's developed at quarterback. Biggest concern for me, offensive line, keeping McKenzie Milton upright. If it's a challenge again this year for that offensive line, he's in trouble. Florida State, once again, will struggle to be close to 500 and probably schedule another game somewhere in a midweek so they can become bowl eligible again. It's going to be another long slog. I'm not all that enthusiastic.
But they did address the issue with the offensive line in the transfer portal and in recruiting the last couple of years. And this is the year where some of that fruits will come to bear. There is some outstanding skill players on that offensive side of Florida State. And what I like about McKenzie Milton as the quarterback of FSU is this is a guy that can absorb Mike Norvell's system. And I think he's tailor-made for that system. And if he's 100%, I think this offense is greatly improved. And I really think if that's the case, we're looking at a team that can challenge or at least be in the range with Clemson when they play them later in the year. That will be the game that kind of will be the grade there of where Florida State is. The defense has been an issue. But you could say a defense is an issue on any program right now, the way offenses are.
Oh, yeah.
Gave up 36 points a game, 6.5 yards a play last year. Yes,
but they have the weapons now to be able to outscore people, which they haven't had in the past. So my stock is up on Florida State right now. Now they do open at home against Notre Dame. So right off the bat, we're going to see just how much improved. Is this the Willie Taggart versus Virginia Tech debut that we saw from the beginning, a slow car crash?
It goes so well.
or is this, hey, we're fired up. We got the other golden helmets coming in. And we've got all these great skill players now, and we're improved in the trenches. If they win that game, then I think after you got Jacksonville State, and then you go to Wake Forest, Louisville is down this year, Syracuse is down. I mean, you're looking at going 5-0 before you go to Chapel Hill on October 9th. And that's a test. And then Clemson 2 weeks later or 3 weeks later, that's a stretch we're going to find out if Florida State is Florida State again. And I'm pretty optimistic about the Seminoles. And I come to this from an objective level, not skewered like John is.
I would agree. I think that's the team to me that is the most intriguing team in the ACC. They may not be the best team in the ACC, but they're the most intriguing and probably have one of the best storylines in Milton. I'm very curious to see what they do. But I think, like Wilkie said, I think that's a team that's trending a little bit up for the first time in a very long time. John's going to, no, we're terrible.
Pretty much. I'm the alum on the show. I can do that.
Now, what concerns me, for me, is the way they closed the season at BC. And BC has not been a fun place for FSU to play in the last 15 years since BC came in the league, and then going to Gainesville to take on the Gators in the annual in-state rivalry, the Sunshine State Showdown. So that could, after all the energy they've spent, hopefully they don't have the injury issues. But at that time of year, that's where you're ripe to have some poor performances after, doing what you've been doing during the regular season. But, obviously John is skewered, being a Seminole alum. I'm a Missouri State alum. I have Bobby Petrino as my head coach. Hey, we made the playoffs last year.
Yeah, you did.
Indeed. Guys, why don't we wrap it up here in the second quarter of the show and kick it over to halftime. When we come back in the second half of the show, we're going to talk the AAC, the American Athletic Conference, arguably the sixth major conference, or the fifth, depending on your thoughts on the Pac-12. That and more when we
Or the
come
Big
back to
12.
the second half of the show. I think John might have to go actually do his paying work here in a couple of minutes with the Atlanta United 2, so he may not be back. And if that's the case, John, we'll see you next week. Stay tuned when we come back to the second half of the show. Brother Wilkie and I talk American Athletic Conference, that and more when we're back just in a little over a minute.
The OSG app is up and running on your Android or iPhone. Install the
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, contact my friend Steve Apolinski of Apolinski and Associates. He's been representing individuals for over 30 years throughout Georgia and Alabama. Email him at steve@aa-legal.com or call him 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
Yogurt! Yogurt! I hate yogurt!
Congratulations, folks. You've made it to the second half of the show. You stuck around, even if John couldn't stick around, to the second half of the review, to the OSG Sports College Football Podcast. And this week, we are talking college football previews. We're sort of going alphabetically, and I guess technically if we were going truly alphabetically, the ACC would have been first, but we actually started off with the ACC because, well, we did.
That's who we are.
But we would be derelict in our duty if we didn't talk about one of the most competitive conferences in college football, not in the Power Five, and that's the American Athletic Conference, Wilkie. And no conversation with the ACC right now starts with anything other than the Cincinnati Bearcats, who were absolutely impressive last season and nearly beat Georgia in their bowl game.
Yeah, and you got a sense that they really wanted to win that, not only win the bowl game, but you got a sense that that would have been a great catapult going into the 2021 season, and it just wasn't to be. And so going into spring and down to fall camp, recovering from that, knowing that their last appearance on national television, they had a chance to beat an SEC school, and it just didn't happen.
Basically a home stadium in the Peach Bowl.
Exactly, in Atlanta, in front of screaming Bulldog fans, which is, yeah, you're right. I mean, but at the same time, I think they wanted that win, and as a momentum to getting into the season. But there's still the question marks about Cincinnati and whether they can compete consistently against the Power Five. And of course, they as we talk about in the ACC, they consider themselves the Power Six, and and they should. But they got the best players in the ACC. Desmond Ridder is a quarterback that is must-see TV. Luke Fickell is a coach that is tailor-made for that. Well, you lived in Cincinnati for a while. You know what the people are like, and Luke Fickell is an upper Midwest guy.
A hard-working guy who came up as a lineman and defensive coordinator. He is a tough man.
So, obviously, they've got Indiana and Notre Dame on the schedule this year. So they get a couple opportunities to prove themselves against the Power Five, against the Big Ten and the major independent. So there are some opportunities for Cincinnati to impress some of the people in the nation. And if they go 2-0 in that stretch, you've got to put them up in the top five and think about, well, if someone's going to crack the top four, the final four, this would be it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, they had a fantastic offense last year, averaging 37.5 points a game.
Yep.
They did lose a couple of offensive linemen, but they also have a couple of running backs who can run the ball really well too. I mean, Ritter was an absolute maestro orchestrating that offense last season. They put up some big numbers against just about everybody they played. And I'm really curious to see what they're going to do when they play Notre Dame. That's going to be a hell of a game, at least in my book, and must-see TV. And for all the discussion we have about their offense, don't forget Cincinnati held their opponents to 16.8 points a game.
Right.
In college football these days, that's almost unheard of.
You're right. And so, yeah, like we said, they're probably the best team or has the best talent in the ACC. You mentioned the running backs. I mean, Jerome Ford. This is a guy that can carry the mail and give some relief to Desmond Ritter, who doesn't feel like he has to do everything. But Cincinnati is the class right now of the American Athletic Conference, and I'm sure people would be intrigued if they could ever match up against Ohio State, and if they ever made the Final Four. I think that intrigues a lot of people, that how that game would unfold.
Central and Southern Ohio would never be the same. The team that probably is closest to be nipping at Cincinnati's heels in the ACC this year, UCF, and the biggest storyline with the Golden Knights this year, it's the Gus bus. Gus Malzahn loses his job at Auburn, and he lands in Orlando at UCF. And I'll be quite honest with you, that might be the perfect place for Gus Malzahn to be a head coach in college football.
Well, he had to rehab his career, and this is probably the best place for him to do that. So kudos for the hire. Dylan Gabriel, he inherits a fantastic quarterback. I think the only concern is, how is he fit in Gus Malzahn's offense? And so that'll be the question for UCF. How will he do in that offense? And a lot of that is language and tendencies, and who is your hot receiver and so forth. So, but they've got, again, UCF has outstanding talent. They're the challenger to Cincinnati. Let's see, when do they play? It's week 7 is when they mix it up. So obviously that's going to be appointment television when Cincinnati and UCF get together. But it's between those two when they get together. So yeah, I think where is Gus Malzahn this year though? Because after all what happened at Auburn, and it was a grind the last couple of years there, we all know how he was just being hammered in the media, hammered by the fan base, and he gets the huge buyout. You wonder why he came back to coach when he had all that money coming his way, but a coach is going to coach, and he landed in the best possible spot, as we said at the top. But how relaxed is he going to be?
Well, you're not looking at that same kind of pressure where the boosters are literally breathing down your neck on every single play.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the UCF fan base is as passionate probably as anyone in college football, just based on some of the reactions we got from one of our shows about a couple of months ago when we talked about the Gus Malzahn hire and we undercounted the student population there. Our YouTube page got lit up. That all being said, I like that. I like what Gus brings to the table. I think he's a great fit for that school. And really, if you look at their schedule, their non-conference games this year, Boise State comes to Orlando, and they go to UCF. They go to UCF. Listen to me. I just flubbed it up again. They go to Louisville. And it's not exactly the powerhouse Louisville team from 4 or 5 years ago. So there's a really good chance they got a chance to win both of those games. And then all eyes fall on October 16th when they go up north and play in Cincinnati. I think this is what you're talking about when we're talking about the two teams that kind of stand up above everybody in the American Athletic Conference this year going in. It may play out not to be that way, but right now going in, it's what I like. Next in the pecking order, arguably, the Houston Cougars. Dana Holgorsen left West Virginia to go down to Houston to play for to coach the Cougars. He was lured in by money and a chance to move them up into the Power Five, but they haven't really, at this point, they haven't really achieved what Houston had achieved over really the last decade. They've been 7-13 in Holgorsen's 2 seasons so far. That's not really that impressive.
No, but he was also he was inheriting a team that really wouldn't fit his system. Mm-hmm. And so now he's got some of his recruits in, some of his players in. I think we're going to see a marked improvement with the Cougars this year. Clayton Tune at quarterback has had a breakout year last year. He's very expected to have another fantastic year. And there's so many weapons out there. You got Tayshaun Henry at running back, who is an exciting player. You got Keyshawn Carter and Katie Ramsey from who transferred in from Louisiana Tech. So you've got some weapons to throw to, and you got a schedule that really looks favorably on for the Cougars. I mean, you open at NRG against Texas Tech, an old Southwest Conference rival. Texas Tech is having their issues right now, and Matt Wells in Lubbock is he's struggled. So that could be a big energy boost and a way to get a positive start to 2021. Then you have the rivalry game against Rice at Rice Stadium. So that's a win. I
said at the Rice Bowl.
Yeah, exactly. You're a funny guy. You've got Memphis you're hosting Memphis this year, and it looks like they avoid Central Florida this year. So, SMU they host. I mean, really, the Tulsa game on October 1st at Tulsa. Tulane's kind of a crapshoot, but really, when you look at it, this is a very favorable schedule for the Cougs. And so if they get any kind of marked improvement, they'll be a factor. I really think it's going to be the first couple of games that are going to determine their fate.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Tune's a fantastic quarterback and a good fit for Dana Holgorsen's offense. And they've got some weapons there. But like most teams at this level, the big question mark is defense. You can't beat teams unless you stop them, and Houston's had trouble doing that, allowing 32 points a game last year.
Well, they only forced 6 turnovers last year too, so that number has to rise as well. But again, they're going to have to outscore people to be able to win.
And the only other team that really intrigues me in the ACC this season is SMU, and they've had some success the last 2 years. Sonny Dykes has done a great job getting them up and running. They're 17-6 over the last 2 seasons, but they got to find somebody to play quarterback. Shane Buechele was their guy for the last 2 years. He's gone now. They've got a transfer from Oklahoma, Tanner Mordecai, and an incoming freshman named Preston Stone, who both on paper look like they could be a good fit, but we're really not going to know until they start playing. Will we?
Well, I like Tanner Mordecai in that role. And I think what's going to be huge for SMU is they got Grant Calcaterra from Oklahoma, who was an outstanding tight end. And so they've got a guy that can make big plays at the tight end position, because they got some burners at wideout that can catch. And Sonny Dykes is a guy that can develop quarterbacks. He developed them at Texas Tech, and now all the other stops he's been at. So I think SMU offensively is going to be fine. It's just getting some games under the belt for the Stangs. So that doesn't really concern me as much as it concerns you. Schedule wise, just checking out their schedule. I mean, going to Houston on October 30th, that's going to be tough. You host UCF, and then you go to Cincinnati. So on November 20th. So, they're probably going to have a loss or two by the time they get there, because they do go to TCU for to play for the Iron Skillet. And TCU is a much better team this year. They do go to Navy, and Navy is expected to be improved this year. So those are going to be some tests. But it doesn't bode well when you have to go to Houston and have to go to Cincinnati. But by that time, the quarterback situation will be pretty much set. You just got to hope they've avoided some injuries, because, depth has always been an issue with the Mustangs.
Yeah, the one other intriguing thing about SMU this season, the new defensive coordinator, a name from the past, Jim Leavitt.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's where he made his money, and he's always had some outstanding defenses, and he knows where to get the players. So that might be the help there for SMU, if they can actually stop people. And we thought, well, Cincinnati also has a pretty damn good defense, but UCF and Houston struggle on that side of the ball. That could be where SMU kind of can take some points away. Although Cincinnati is a team that can grind you down. Yeah. So that's going to be a tough game for them. But we'll see.
Anybody else that kind of jumps off the page for you this year in the ACC? Some teams with some potential spoiler roles here? We're talking about.
Temple is always good for a win that they shouldn't have won. And they always seem to be in that 7-5, 6-5 area, but kind of spoil someone's championship hopes. That's the team I'm kind of looking at. Tulane, they need to be better. They've actually had some decent recruiting classes for a group of 5 team. Those are kind of teams. Memphis, they're kind of on a downward trend right now, because they're still adjusting to Mike Norvell not being there. They're still going to be quality players. They're just not going to be able to challenge for a championship this year. But I think in a few years they will be back challenging UCF and Houston and Cincinnati for that title. The other thing is, as we talk about the American, is the American going to have a totally different makeup in the next few years with all this conference realignment? Are they going to merge with the Big 12 or with the Pac-12, or is there going to be some kind of merge going on? And will they be able to elevate into the power structure where they're getting a team, or maybe another team as they expand to 12? This is kind of the year where they need 3 quality, maybe 4 quality teams that capture the nation. Obviously, Cincinnati will. Houston could. SMU might, if they play kind of above their heads a little bit, as we mentioned, because they're a great storyline. They're always going to bring up the death penalty years, and if they come and have a great year, I think that'll be huge for the American, because they need to get some eyeballs on them. And very similar to how like the Sun Belt did last year. They need some quality wins. You got an opportunity against Notre Dame. So you have those opportunities. You just got to get those wins.
Yeah, we had mentioned Temple just a couple minutes ago. The one name that intrigues me at Temple is a transfer from Georgia, Dwan Mathis. Mathis got to start. He was the starting quarterback for the Georgia Bulldogs in Game 1 of the 2020 season. He struggled in that role. He did not play very well. He lasted 3 quarters roughly before he got replaced. He got another chance in Game 2, I believe, before getting benched as well. Is he somebody that can make an impact at a level like the AAC? Even though he struggled in the mighty SEC, is he in a position now where he might be able to excel and make a difference?
He obviously needed a change of scenery, and that always helps. And there's some good weapons around there for Mathis to throw to and a handoff to. So, and he's not going to have that pressure. You and I have been intimately involved in the SEC. We know what fan bases are like. I mean, that gets to you. And, Temple has a very limited fan base. They are in Philadelphia, and it's all about the Eagles. And so I think he's going to, not having all that attention on him, I think he's going to be pretty good for Temple, and it's going to bode well for him.
And you mentioned the galactic realignment that's kind of in the process of happening again for the second time in the last 10 years in college football. It'll be interesting. I'm very interested to see where the ACC comes into play with all of this, just for the simple fact that there's been rumors that they're looking to swallow the Big 12, what's left of the Big 12. There's rumors that they might join up with one of the other conferences. There's all kinds of different rumors floating around about where that'll play out. I would still maintain they, maybe not from a depth standpoint, from a top 2 or 3 or 4, they definitely are on a level with the Pac-12, and you could argue that they were on a level with the Big 12, with the exception of maybe Oklahoma. So it's going to be interesting to see how that all unfolds. We probably will not have an answer to that question here for at least another few months, if not into the year 2022. And I'm sure that's going to give us, Wilkie, plenty to talk about here in the future here on the review.
Yes, it's going to be a weekly topic, and expect the unexpected. That's all I can say.
I'm excited, though. We finally got to get down to doing previews. We really didn't get to do them last year because, well, pretty much everything was thrown off due to the pandemic. But we've gotten to preview a couple of the big, stronger conferences this year. We got through the A schools. What do you say next week we go through the B schools, or the big schools? The Big 12, because the Big 12 is going to still be the Big 12 with Oklahoma and Texas in 2021. And the Big 10, we talk both of them when we come back next week with another episode of The Review. You have been listening to The Review on the OGS Sports Podcasting Network.